I want to hear what the people they talk. Want to get a shakeleti love. See love when I want to get another one. I go take and do it in I love. Waiting you love, oh. Maybe waiting I love, oh. Waiting I love, I go do what we done right. I go no be vodka. This time I need ginger. But I know the ways that
you let a yum 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 yum. Naya pere, matinaya pese. You let a yum 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 yum. Naya pere, muna kapela, chora kakisa, oyari hele pere, balungana baire.
All right, welcome. It's yet another Saturday afternoon, and we come to you with Political Justice. It's a talk show about the politics in Ghana. We live in the diaspora, but very concerned about events in Ghana. And so every Saturday we meet to discuss some of the emerging issues in our politics, especially now that we are in the campaign season. It is Manifesto season. Last week, the MPP outdoored their manifesto, chronicling all that they intend to do should Ghanaians extend their stay in power. Today in Winneba, the NDC was also outdooring its manifesto with a similar intention of trying to convince Ghanaians that they deserve power and not the ruling MPP. And so we are going to talk about these manifestos, particularly the MPP, especially that they released just a week ago. And so we will delve a lot more into the MPP manifesto. We'll also pull up some similarities between the two proclamations with respect to specific policy issues that the NDC is proposing to do when they get the nod, and the NPP also proposing to do should Ghanaians extend their nod as well. Should Ghanaians extend their stay in office as well. So, but particularly we will delve more into the MPP manifesto. So today, my very consistent Zita Seshi is going to join me in doing justice to this subject matter. Hopefully later in the show, we're going to be joined by Alfred Appiah. I think when the when the MPP had his manifesto launch, he was on TV3 live, with the host discussing the MPP manifesto. So he probably had some left over from that discussion that he can, help us here do justice to the issue. So Zita, you're welcome.
Thank you. It seems everybody's enjoying the last days of summer that we have, and it's about to start in September for the parents. So I can imagine a lot of our panelists do have other family commitments.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So today it's just you and I. We'll do the best that we can.
We always do the best that we can.
Yeah, exactly. So I would like us to begin with the MPP. And I will start off by playing a video of the president, Nana Akufo-Addo, during that campaign launch, essentially saying that he is the most appropriate person to tell us about the character of Bawumia and that we should trust his judgment by voting Bawumia into power come December 7th, right? The election is on December 7th, I think. And so let's listen to him and then also listen to Bawumia confirm the fact that he and his boss have been on the same page the entire 7.5 years. And from there, I mean, with that canvassing, we can then do justice to his proclamations in the manifesto, right? So let's listen to the president extol the credentials of his vice president.
And to talk about that.
Okay, let me begin it.
Things that we're going to do in the next 8 years. I don't intend to talk about that. What I want to do is to give testimony and make an appeal to the Ghanaian people through you why they should give the leadership of this country to Mahamudu Bawumia and Matthew Opoku Prempeh. Because at the end of the day, plans, policies, programs, if there's no character, if there's no strength, if there's no determination of will in the part of the people involved, they just remain plans and programs. I don't think there's anybody in this country better placed to testify about the capacity of our presidential ticket than me, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. I am the best. I am the best placed person to give the testimony, and clearly also the best place to appeal to the people of Ghana to give the stewardship of this country for the next 8 years to Dr. Bawumia and his running mate, Napul. It was 16 years ago that Mahamudu Bawumia and I first met and decided to join our lives together. I can say that there's not one day that I've regretted joining my life to his and his to me. In opposition as well as in government, he has been a model of loyalty, of honesty, of dedication, and of patriotism. This is a man who lives and breathes Ghana. And whatever commitments he has made before you and before the people of Ghana, I can put my hand on my heart and say he will deliver on each one of those commitments. People have had problems with their vice presidents in the Fourth Republic. We won't go over that. I, Nana Addo, I've never had any problem with my vice president. I've gone to bed every night secure in my knowledge that my vice president stands firmly with and behind me in everything that I've tried to do in these last 7.5 years. He has been the picture, the model of loyalty itself. And all I can say to his vice is that even if he has half of the loyalty that Mahamudu Bawumia has shown to me, he is going to be an excellent vice president. All
right, so Zita, at this point, we can confirm that Baumia has been with the president every step of the way. Every single policy that has come out of that office, I don't think it's possible for him to disassociate himself from it. What do you think?
I mean, I'm not sure. I was trying to understand the thought process of the president when he talks about, Baumia's character and that he can vet for character. We have also had the opportunity to evaluate Baumia's character and his consistent ability to keep shifting the goalpost and disassociating himself. And later when we get into the discussion, it's amazing that Baumia was able to talk for 1 hour 45 minutes and seemingly acts like he's isolated from the current government. It's like, oh, nobody have ever done this. I'm doing this. But then your president says that, and he kept consistently, my boss, kept referring to the president as my boss. So it is amazing that he has all these new policies in the manifesto that he claims are groundbreaking, have never been done. It's going to be his government. Yet he's been part of, according to the president, been part of, they've joined their lives together in every step of the way.
Those are the president's words, that they joined their lives together.
16 years ago, and every step of the way they've been together. Yeah. So the key question here is, are we going to hold Baumia accountable for the failures of the incumbent government? Or are we going to go with Baumia's, rhetoric of, oh, I'm isolated, I'm just the mate, I don't know what is going on? Because your boss says that both of you have been together on this journey. And so his successes are your successes, his failures are your failures.
Exactly.
But you are saying that, you are a mate, and then you are the one that is coming to revolutionize everything for us in Ghana. So for me, I did not understand where the president was coming from, but perhaps it is because of maybe they've done, they've looked at the court of public opinion and Baumia's character is shaken, and so he wanted to instill a sense of confidence in the Ghanaians that, oh, I've known this person, I can vet for his character. We've been together 16 years and he is the man for the job. Am I persuaded? I am not persuaded, because Baumia has not showed any consistency. Even this manifesto is a huge contradiction. There is no continuity.
We'll come to the specifics, but I just wanted us to lay the canvas for the conversation, right? With respect to the president saying that his vice president has been with him every step of the way, that their lives have been tied together. Those are as strong as a married couples exchanging vows, pretty much, right? So that's what he says. And I want us to use that as a platform. In fact, the vice president himself confirms this early in his speech at this campaign launch. And I would like us to listen to him, after which we would proceed to some of the specific policies that he articulated when he had the floor.
That access to education, fundamental to building any modern, prosperous society, is ensuring that access to education and health is available to all, and that there is a safety net for the most vulnerable. Under the two-term administration of His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's government, I can say without any fear of contradiction that no past leader has done more to uplift the poor and the vulnerable in society than my boss. We put in place new ones and expanded existing social policies and programs for the masses across Ghana, like the free senior high school, free TVET, Agenda 111, one constituency, one ambulance, expanding school feeding, national health insurance care for childhood cancer, sickle cell patients, and kidney dialysis, and so on. I pledge to you that my government will protect and deepen all these.
Okay. So Fifi has joined us. Let me bring him up. Yeah, and then okay. All right. So Fifi, you're welcome. Are you able to hear us? Okay. Um, I don't know what's going on with Fifi, but anyway. So Zita, now with that video, I just wanted us to confirm that Baumia is speaking of his government in the collective. He makes reference to what they have achieved as a government since coming into power in 2016. He extols the achievement of the government, and in this particular respect, it was in the area of what they have done for people with disability, right? And so it confirms the fact that he and the president have been together. I mean, it's a collective policy. So I find it difficult when people would want to isolate Bamia from the government when it comes to certain achievements and then seek to create a separation when things are deemed not to be the best. But at least you've heard from him. He has spoken about the government's efforts and in a collective way. And I guess he takes responsibility for the achievements. And so when when we evaluate the government in its entirety, then he has to also take responsibility for some of the shortcomings of the government, right?
Yes, no. Well, it's not that anyone is separating Baumia from. He is the one doing that. When it comes to failures, he's the one who say, "Oh, I'm the driver's mate. This and that. I'm not the one who led this. I'm coming to do this." So I don't think anyone has deliberately isolated Baumia from the MPP government and its failures and policies, and of course successes. Baumia has selective amnesia. He continuously chooses where to pitch camps. When it goes in his favor, he would say, "Oh, we did this." But when it does not, he would say, "Oh, I was the driver's mate, and I am coming to do this." And so I spent an entire 1 hour 47 minutes listening to him. It was gruesome, and I'm like, why? I understand what the president was trying to do, because in the court of public opinion, Baumia has lost credibility. A lot of people, one of the pull factors for the NPP being enticing 8 years ago was the Baumia factor. Was, oh, this person has a PhD in economics. He's coming to tackle our failing economy, something the NDC at the time had failed to do. And so because he was branded as somebody who was coming to deliver and came with all these educational credentials, people bought into it. He has lost credibility. He is not consistent. He has selective amnesia. He celebrates their small successes when he needs to. And when it comes to the big failures, the massive corruption and other things, he decides to say, "Oh, I was a driver's mate and I am coming to, give you a new leader. I am the new, I'm the new face of the MPP."
Transportation.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, coming to show you something else, or take Ghana to the next level, aka through digitalization and the fourth industrial revolution, if I should quote his words. So he is positioning himself as the new savior for Ghana, but isolating himself from the 80 years that the MPP has done.
Yeah, but there was one of the in that campaign launch during his speech. He said he has been adjudged the most consequential vice president in the history of vice presidents. Yeah, that I don't know where that evaluation is from. If there's an independent body out there that conducted an empirical study and adjudged him as the best or most consequential vice president ever. But the other thing is, I have a lot of friends who sympathize with the MPP. They don't hesitate to say that this government has been a complete and utter failure, yet they think that Baumia should be given the chance. And the idea is that he's never been president before. Yeah, so I mean, there are a lot of people, and those same people would argue that Baumia is the most impactful vice president there has ever been. So and it's difficult for you to really understand that somebody can agree that this government, in their words, is the worst government in the history of Ghana, yet somehow the vice president can be isolated from it. And in fact, a request can be made that he should be made the president in the next term. Yeah, so I've had people argue this way that
I
somehow
mean,
magically,
that thought process is baffling because I don't understand how he can isolate himself. He was part of the government. He's vice president, for crying out loud. And like one
okay,
of the
let's try again with Fifi if it's able to join us.
sure.
I don't think so. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, let's continue. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just to me it's baffling because we cannot in one vein celebrate him and then isolate him from the failures of the government. He is he is a vice president. That is second in command after the president. So what new policies, what new leadership is Baumia coming to show us that we've not experienced in the past 8 years? That is the key question. So for me, it goes back to ethnic allegiance and blind politics, political party allegiance. It's not coming down to critical thinking, rational thinking, and logical reasoning, because any logical person would not give anybody, even when you take it from the realms of politics to just the realms of business, nobody will hire somebody who was seven in the rank and file of a company that went down the drain, and that person was positioned in a strong leadership position. Nobody will hire you that easily. They need to query you deeply to ensure that you take accountability and you are not coming to court. We don't want new policies. What I wanted to hear is about manifesting some of the policy. They didn't do 1 million, one constituency, one district, one factory. So I don't know. You have to continue and then try and remedy some of the alien factors like the economy, strengthening the CD, reducing inflation. But you listen to this entire, I was like, honestly, I'm gonna land with this. I don't think the MPP takes a Ghanaian seriously, and I don't think they believe the ordinary Ghanaian is intelligent enough. That is the conclusion that I have come to with this charade of a manifesto reading. Okay. I don't think so, because listening, I was baffled, and I don't know why any thoughtful, well-meaning, and respectful political party that respects the intelligence of the electorate will put this together and believe it will assimilate and it will be accepted by the people of Ghana. It was a disrespect to our intelligence. I did not see any continuity in policy, and it's just overly inflated ideas that are not feasible. And I think Baumia is riding on cloud nine with most of his policies. I think it is time for him to go out of office. In my honest opinion, MPP will be better off rebranding a different candidate in the future. But Baumia as the face of the MPP, it is not a good look. From my opinion, as an academic, as a critical thinker, I don't think it's a good look.
And then normally when we talk about Baumia, I think there might be the tendency for people to think that people are personal when we talk about Baumia, right? But it's not personal. It is just with respect to how he's positioning himself in the campaign. Of course, you are the presidential candidate for your party. You have to campaign and ask Ghanaians to give you the nod. But how do you go about it? That is always the question. So, I mean, he's obviously a smart guy, but the attempt to play both sides is what is difficult here for me. But, I mean, and talking about promises, the whole thing looked like a compendium of promises for me. You know, back in the day, they would say, there's a compendium of English or wherever where they would compile English words that you could learn, memorize, and as if you were taking the GRE or something like that. the whole manifesto sounded like it was just a complete compendium of promises. I would expect a manifesto to be in a thematic form where you would tackle broad issues, and within those broad issues, there are specific issues that you want to address. But it seemed to me that they just listed promises and they ran through them quickly without even bothering to organize them in a very thematic way. And I also observed that he was reading most of the time. It was obvious that he hadn't read it before. I mean, maybe if he had read, probably gone through it maybe one round, but I saw the hesitation in saying some of the things, and it sounded as if he had just received the script prior to going on stage. So it was overly scripted for me, and it read as if somebody had just handed it to him right before he went on, and then he tried to just read a bunch of promises. So it didn't sound natural to me. That's my initial impressions. But
I agree. I agree. The same thing. I was like, Baumia, you have a PhD, for crying out loud. You know, you needed to group your agenda or your manifesto in broad categories or themes. If it's infrastructure, education, health, and health. But it's like you are listening to, he's talking about economy, then the next time we are in education, then the next time we are back to like something like an economic promise. And I'm like, and even though I spent 1 hour 45 minutes, mentally I was agitated because I'm like, he's moving in zigzag.
Yes.
And he was reading, and it was painful to watch. And that is why I said that as an academic, I'm not sure if MPP understands what they're doing, but my intelligence was my level of intelligence was disrespected and insulted on multiple levels. You know, unlike John Dramani Mahama, when he was reading, he would list, okay, in the sector of education, this is what we're doing. In the economy, he would talk about in terms of how we create jobs, what we are going to do for women, that and that. So it was easier to follow his thought process.
We'll come to the GM and then, but
again, I'm just comparing.
It's comparative. Yes.
In terms of delivery, it was easier to follow his thought process and his mindset and his, broad plan for Ghana than Baumia, because Baumia was everywhere. And like I told you, I have 2 pages. So for those who say, oh, Dr. Zito's just, I have 2 pages. And I can tell you from my notes, I'm everywhere. We go to economy, we are back in education. From education, he's talking about pharmacy and health. I'm like, okay, dude, you have a PhD. And if there's anything we've learned during a rigorous academic process, is to group our thought process in a thematic way or in broad areas so people can understand. So when you list that this is education, these are your key policies under education. If you are talking about health, these are your key policies under health. If you're talking about economy and and specifically job creation, these are your key points. If you're talking about infrastructure, these are the things you're going to list. He was all over the place. He didn't look like somebody who has gone through a rigorous academic process.
But you see, it goes back to you saying that sometimes the politicians take us for granted, because obviously he didn't write it, and also even if they wrote it for him, I should be expected, he never went through it maybe multiple times before going on stage, and he probably didn't even have enough time. He may have just received it shortly before he went on stage, and so you could see that he was missing words and stuttering in the process of reading it. Wasn't comfortable with the entire script, and it speaks to the level at which, or the extent to which, politicians take us seriously. They would outsource these jobs to aides. And I have realized that to some extent, there's no discipline in the system. So if an aide produces a bad speech, there are no consequences. So, I mean, Akufo-Addo's plagiarized speech, you'd expect that the guy who was in charge of that speech would lose his job right away, but I don't think that happened. So in the same way, if somebody gives a mediocre speech to, or something like this manifesto that was given to Baumia to go up there and deliver, and you realize that it's full of inconsistencies, it's poorly organized, and then he comes and delivers to the Ghanaian public, and he doesn't go back and then discipline his aides for giving him such a bad rap, then it just means that he doesn't really take us seriously, because I would expect that if, as a candidate, you go through the manifesto several times, basically soak yourself in it, that if they wake you up from your sleep, you would be able to tell them what is in what page. But it doesn't seem like Baumia thoroughly read that manifesto before he went up on stage. And again, we can summarize that to mean that the guy is not taking you guys seriously. He thinks that it's just a checkbox in the campaign process, right? We've had manifesto is done. Let's go about, making promises. Simple as that. So Fifi, let's welcome you. I think you had.
I just wanted to quickly say this. And the truth of the matter is that the average Ghanaian will not read political manifestos. They will not. They are going to vote based on ethnic lines, based on sentiment.
I have a slide is really playing up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Fifi still has some technical difficulties.
Oh, he does? It's
unfortunate.
unfortunate.
Because I think he's frozen as we speak now.
Oh, man. Yeah. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, but if as and when he's able,
I do have a slight technical difficulties. I'm gonna go at the background and then try and reset my systems and see.
Okay.
So please pardon me.
All right, that's fine. Yeah, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so I honestly, Ghana, I don't think the ordinary Ghanaian will read these manifestos.
Yeah, but I'm not even talking about the reading. But
yeah, but if you don't know, but Agana, these are the key things we need to evaluate before it helps us in decision making. So if we are not reading, are they even watching? If they not read, I'm telling you, I can take a poll on social media as somebody with over 100,000 followers, and I can tell you the majority will not. I'm telling you, the ordinary Ghanaian is not invested in, even watching. But because even if you watch it, like, is this dude serious? They will not sit through a 1 hour 47 minutes video posted by Joy on YouTube to know even what is in the manifesto. Much more read it. But these are important measures when it comes to elections and politics. You need to know the thought process and the roadmap and the agenda of the party for the nation. But they will not. And because they know majority will not, that is why they put together a shabby document to disrespect our intelligence.
Yeah. I'm even talking about the delivery process, the seriousness, the lack of seriousness with which the candidate treated the whole process is where I'm talking about that it doesn't show respect to the Ghanaian people, that you are coming to a major event like that and it didn't seem like you had a full hang on the document that you were coming to deliver. But let's move beyond this and look at some of the specific policy issues. He made some interesting comments about agriculture. Particularly, there was a mention of a project, the Palugu Dam project, which we have had a conversation about before. Let's listen to him, and then when we come back, we'll talk about this.
Food security through the application of technology by half this year. Prices remain high. I want a Ghana where we can attain food security through the application of technology and irrigation to commercial large-scale farming. We will also promote the use of agricultural lime to reduce the acidity of our soils, enhance soil fertility, and get more yield from the application of fertilizers. Ghana has an abundance of limestone to do this. I will prioritize the construction of the Palugu Dam by using the private sector financing to crowd in grant financing.
Okay, so listen, what Baumia is saying here is not that when he is given a nod, he's going to continue what they have already done as a government. You are part of this government, a very senior person for that matter. So if your idea about improving the agriculture sector was to add on to what you had already done in the past 80 years, that is quite understandable. But his articulation here seemed like somebody who is just going to who is coming into the political scene afresh. Now, he mentions the Palugu Dam. Again, we've had a conversation here about the Palugu Dam because there was a parliamentary hearing in which a government official, I don't recall if it was a minister, who said a certain amount of money, about $11 million or so, had been paid to the contractors that were in charge of constructing or rehabilitating the Palugu Dam. And it became a big issue because some of the MPs from the area said that work hadn't been done on the dam. Meanwhile, the parliamentary hearing suggested that payment had been made to a contractor who was supposed to work on the dam. In fact, some NDC officials actually went to the Palugu Dam, toured the entire place, took pictures, had journalists with them. They were interviewed, and apparently, no construction equipment had set foot on the grounds, but payment had been made. Here again, we have Dr. Baumia promising that the dam would be constructed. How many times are we going to construct this dam? Again, as you said, not a lot of people will catch this. So except that you are somebody who is heavy on the issues, right? You are the heavy issue, electorate. But if you have someone who is light on the issues and then you just hear them as and when they come, this is going to elude you. But this was a major issue in Ghana about maybe 3 months ago. Yet he's promising that that same dam that was paid for, where work had not been done, is going to be worked upon, and he is delivering this as a campaign promise and expecting that. And so if you're from the area and you're not really observant on the issues, you're going to miss the fact that this dam has already been paid for.
And that is why I said that, it is what it is. The average Ghanaian, the majority of the electorate will not read the manifesto, neither would they even listen to this manifesto. We need to be honest with that. And that is why they play with us like that. That is why Baumia would do this, a shabby manifesto, come around, say things, and I'm like, you must be kidding me. And for me as an academic, I am highly disappointed. I am embarrassed. And anybody who's been through 2024 already knows how PhD people will come under severe scrutiny and disrespect. And it's all due to Baumia's conduct, because there is no iota of academic refinement and seriousness in his leadership. And so he comes on here, he says this thing, and he's and the thing that baffles consistently, private sector funding, private sector, we are partnering with private sector to everything in his campaign. Road and infrastructure, private sector.
Yeah.
Agriculture, private sector. Mining. I'm like, are you kidding me? Everything is private sector partnership. Then we are giving people tax amnesty so they can use the money to create this. I was just looking at you, must be kidding me.
Well, he says he's keeping with the traditions of his party, which is a capitalist-oriented party. They are ideologically capitalist, and so his suggestion that the private enterprise or private sector should play a significant role in economic development is out of that tradition. But
but if it is out of that tradition, then you need to also share the socio-economic implications of that.
Yeah.
Because private sector dominance leads to so many things: job losses, redundancies, because capitalism's agenda is to maximize profit and reduce cost of production. And so if you are inclined towards that and giving the private sector more power, they need to understand the trickle-down effect, how that, because he's touting that they created 2.3 million jobs. How do you do that? Because that goes against the role of capitalism. Capitalists are focused on maximizing their profit, making so much profit with a little cost of production. Whatever it costs them to invest in producing something must be so small for them to maximize. That's the entire agenda. And if that is the the module you're going with, that would hurt Ghana's economy so bad, and even your ability to create more jobs. Yeah. So I'm trying to I don't know if I need to contact University of Simon Fraser because
No. I mean, listen, politicians.
no
Look,
contact. I mean,
no.
just
Listen, I mean, I don't. No, but the thing is, I don't want us to reduce this issue because it's become a trend in Ghana where we are so credentialists, right? We are
yeah,
so tied to credentials that
that we
we
don't.
already immediately assign a certain level of know-how, wisdom to people with a certain level of education, which I feel like let's judge people by what they put out there rather than what
I
their
disagree.
credentials are. And that's why, there's a heavy backlash on PhD holders and professors in Ghana
I disagree.
because over the years they've assigned them they've given them certain qualities that people are beginning to question. And I say, well, let's
But
yeah.
can I go through? Let's PhD is not
Yeah,
easy.
but the thing about politics is also an entirely different animal. If you
But
don't stick
Bawumia
to
is not the first PhD holder to enter politics. Professor Tamils was. So let us talk.
but
I'm
that's where
saying that
different character traits then play a role. It depends on how far you are willing to put principles aside and behave like the stereotypical, politician. There are others that wouldn't go that far. Others would, even though a PhD doesn't necessarily imbue you with morals or certain, what do you call it, ethical traits or whatever. So I wouldn't want to question a politician's behavior based on his academic credential. I would just evaluate him based on he as a person and how he carries himself as a politician.
I
So,
disagree.
yeah,
I think your credentials, to a large extent, and that's why I said Bawumia was sold as an economic genius because of credentials. And so, if you are packaged as that, I would expect at least some level of knowledge and how you talk. Because for you to lean towards your party's tradition of being capitalist in terms of the ideology, then you need to understand the other repercussions. Anybody who've read anything on structural adjustment and private, we all know how social services are impacted, the implications of capitalism on society. And so, and that is just, even I'm not an economist, and that's just basic know-how as somebody who've read quite
but you expect him to know all this, right? I mean, he's an economist.
because he's an economist. So if he's leaning towards that, then I want to hear, and it's fine for him to lean towards that. I want to hear other policies that will make up for some of the downsides of capitalism. That's all I'm saying. And I disagree that a person's knowledge, and because Bawumia was branded based on his knowledge and his credentials.
Yes.
Let's center that. He was not branded based on, it is now that Nana is trying to tell us about his character. Initially, 16 years ago, it was about his knowledge. He's an economic genius. He has this PhD, and this is what he's going to contribute to Ghana. And that is what made him appealing and appetizing. And I would expect him to apply that in his delivery. That is all I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So, well, let's continue with some of the promises. I mean, I'm just going to simplify it as promises. He is talking about electric vehicles. Let's use
the cost of transport. Reduce the cost of transportation by promoting and supporting electric vehicles for public transportation. By the grace of God, I hope the first 100 buses that we will be introducing for public transportation will hopefully, inshallah, arrive before the end of December this year. We are also going to expand the Gold for Oil program to continue stabilizing the price of fuel. Stabilizing the price of spare parts through the flat rate duties for all importers policy, which will bring predictability and stability on prices of imported goods. Ladies and gentlemen, we are also going to make your driver's license valid.
Okay, and that was a very sleek way of putting it. He's like, the first set of buses are going to arrive before December this year. Now the election is what, December 7th.
Yeah.
He's so vague in saying that it's going to arrive before December. When in December is it going to arrive? Besides, is he talking about electric buses when he says the first set of buses? I didn't quite get that, because he says we're going to leverage electric vehicles. I mean, and I think his argument is that the electric vehicles are going to make transportation more cost effective or more less costly. I don't know where he was going with that.
Yes, with the buses, because fuel leads to hijack.
But electric buses also use fuel. It's just a different type of fuel.
Yes, it's a different type of fuel. So in his estimation, that would not, because if you are specifically relying on diesel and petrol, then we all know that with a little short in the dollar and inflation, that always affects transport fares in Ghana. And so his belief and his proposition is that the electric buses will reduce the cost of transportation. Again, if you listen attentively, he moved from that straight to import duties.
Yeah.
And that is what I'm talking about. He didn't elaborate. He just quickly
jumps.
To importation.
Yeah.
And the key question is, how would these buses be serviced? We've seen the ambulance with money lost.
But even let's stick to the feasibility of introducing electric buses. Because, and I don't want us to just, sweep it under the carpet and move on as if he said something that is unquestionable. I mean, we are already, historically, one of our biggest problems has been the supply of electricity in Ghana. It's disrupted so many businesses. In fact, one of the reasons why Mahama lost the 2016 election was because of Dumso power supply. The movie industry complained that he essentially was the reason behind the collapse of Nollywood, because they no longer had consistent supply of electricity to do their work. Here we still have that problem, right? The Dumso hasn't gone away. I mean, we've been able to patch it up somehow, but we cannot completely say we have solved the electricity problem in Ghana. But the vice president is promising electric buses.
Perhaps you didn't listen. He promised solar panels. He said solar panels are going to come in place.
Yeah, so but it goes back to
I'm not saying that you are not making a viable argument. I'm just saying that for me, electricity problems are the issue. For me, servicing and training people to know how to use these buses are also another problem. We don't want buses packed in there. You know how Ghana is. Buses packed. The electric power, whatever is run off, we can't move, and people are stuck on the roadside in the middle of the night with no know-how on how to operate these buses. And like I have said, and I'm keen on hearing what Fifi has to say, but like you said, Baumia's manifesto is promises, and as an academic, as a scholar, as somebody who's well-read, and somebody who respects my colleagues, I was utterly disappointed. His policies are not feasible. Ghana does not have the system to host and nurture most of his policies, and for me, I was disappointed, and I would be keen on hearing what Fifi has to say.
Yeah, I don't know if Fifi's is still his connection is stable. Are you able to contribute now?
I think I'm okay now. Yes, that's correct. I think I'm okay. If you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you. So basically, we've been talking about. I think there's a slight delay, but yes, I think you're able to contribute to the conversation. But so I'm in the environmental field. I'm certainly for any type of green industry, but you have to start somewhere. And then it goes back to the lack of structure or form in the manifesto, that usually you have to start from a certain place and then move to another place, right? It's in different stages. And so if you're proposing shifting your transportation system to more green sources of energy, then you have to put in place the initial infrastructure that would provide the green energy before you then shift your electric, your transportation fleet to that. right? You can't just be wishy-washy about it and throw one thing here, throw it out there because you think that it is an area that is a positive area. It's an area that people cannot argue against because it's become trendy to advocate green infrastructure. And so you just throw it in there that, oh, we're going to cut costs by introducing electric buses. What infrastructure do you have in terms of electricity provision that is going to be able to fuel those electric buses? But anyway, Fifi, if you can hop in here and your thoughts about the MPP's manifesto and
Thank you very much, Doc, and great to have you again, Zita, to be able to join you. My apologies, I joined late. I've had a lot of technical challenges. Got back from Ghana a few days, and I haven't actually tested any of my system because I changed the settings whilst I was there. And I thought I was jumping straight into a broadcast, and it's giving me a lot of issues. So please pardon me. Slightly under the weather, so
okay.
I might not have my groove on this evening, but pardon me. The audience know how I deliver. Now let me go straight into NPP manifesto. This is a very empty manifesto. Is there anything in it for Ghanaians? Absolutely no. Is there anything to change the dynamics of our country, Ghana? Absolutely no. There's nothing in it. It's just empty promises, empty promises, empty promises. Just oh gosh,
Yeah, you keep going, you keep going. I think it's
my
a break,
apologies.
but
I think
yeah,
yeah, okay, yeah,
yeah.
just to deceive Ghanaians again, and then at the end of the day, when they are given the mandate, they go in there and do whatever they want to do. Look, as it is as a country, or as Ghana sister as a country, do we need any of these such promises that we know first of all it's not feasible? Because I've heard Zita and yourself spoke about the feasibility studies that have gone into it. I believe none. Why? Because the NPP has always taken Ghanaians for fools. They just wake up and they promise us, believing that once they promise us, Ghanaians will buy into it, because that is what Ghanaians have done in the past, and they've gone to do the same going to work for them. Now let's look at the infrastructure to do with electric buses. One thing we shouldn't forget is this is the same old NPP government who promised us in 2020 that they were going to take the Abobo years away and replace them with electric vehicles. So people were going to have electric vehicles.
So it's a promise that has been made
Did,
already before in the past.
did we see electric vehicles at all? No. No. Of messing around with my system here, but
No,
I'll
no, just
try
keep
as
going, keep
much
going.
as I can.
It's a delay,
And
but
today,
we hear you. Yeah.
okay, today same party is promising us electric vehicles, and it's a alternative fuel. And it's a good as it is, even the Western standard alternative fuel of electric vehicles is they struggle. It's a challenge to the West. It's a challenge to the West because powering buses or letting them to have this alternative energy to run on our road, it's not like this going to a station and then plugging them in and that's it, off they go. No, you need to actually have that tangible infrastructures along the routes, because there are calculations that after every 4 hours, 5 hours, 7 hours, depending the manufacturer and the battery life, that battery is going to drain out. So, for instance, London buses have even introduced what is called a system that is bus terminal systems. That after every drive, when they come to a stop, there is an electric component at the top of their electric buses that get touched into a battery. a cable and recharge it for them because they were struggling initially. And we don't have that as a country. We are struggling as a country to even, as we speak, Dunso is still in Ghana. So we are struggling to even provide electricity across Ghana, and then electric buses, whilst the infrastructure is not even there. So it tells you some of these empty promises. As you did mention, as academia, as they are, they know Ghanaians have bought you their lives in the past, and that is exactly what they are doing. There are no policies within the NPP manifesto. If you look across the policy, there is nothing that has been mentioned change the dynamics of Ghana. There is nothing that they've mentioned that will change or will bring us from the ditch that we are in as a country. I cannot see, I can't mention one. Is you look across and it's all empty promises. It's just sad. It's one of those. And I've said to Ghanaians, look, don't do this to yourselves by just going out there and to vote based on party colors, because Baumia and the MPP, they have nothing new to offer Ghana. There is nothing in this that will change the fortunes of Ghana and change the lifestyle of the ordinary Ghanaian who is today suffering. We need to look at and read through the policies across board, all the political parties. And I've always said you can only see the difference between Ghana has nothing for Ghana, absolutely nothing for Ghana.
Okay.
Emerging economy, as a third world economy. They have not even mentioned how we will be able to be first and foremost be self-adequate to be able to pay our own staff, to be able to pay our own civil servants without not going out to go and borrow. If you look at our gross domestic product, which is the GDP for the past God knows how many years, every single year we have to go, there is a deficit. So we have to go out and borrow to plug the gap. And they have not even spoken about this, which means we are going to fall back on the same system again. Go out there, borrow, come back and consume them. Go out there, borrow, come back and consume them. And I thought, okay, as Zita mentioned, Baumia is academia. We thought Baumia will come out with something innovative, something to challenge the NDC and the rest of the parties. But the MPP, unfortunately, have failed to do that. And look, I'm not surprised, because when people tend to, or parties tend to be in government for so long, what they tend to do is they tend to run out of idea. And this NPP run out of idea. We've seen it even in the West in early 2000, when Labour Party totally ran out of idea at a point that they thought freebies to the nationals was what was going to keep them in power. And it never worked. They were kicked out. We've seen again, conservatives after 13 years is the same story. So it is what it is. They have run out of idea. They've run out of road, and Ghanaians don't need them in it this time. No wonder their policies are so hollow and shallow.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, you know, Fifi has spoken like a true patriotic son of Ghana. And I mean, your argument is that we need to go back to the fundamentals, the basic principles, first principles, right? And I think, and I agree largely with you that the manifesto should be about addressing the very fundamental things that are wrong with our economy and our country at large, right? We still largely borrow to finance the day-to-day running of the government. You have to articulate a vision that is going to address that fundamental problem. If you are a household and you are in debt, you have no business talking about a Christmas list or whatever, right? Your concern should be, how are you going to bring down your debt in your household? And how are you able to take care of your kids' basic needs? And I think basically that's what Ghanaian politicians should be focused on, not making outrageous promises, very lofty promises. Things, because you hear them happening in the West, you think they are so desirable that when you dangle them in front of your people, it will attract them and they will vote for you. And that's exactly what this manifesto is about. Dangling candy in front of kids and then trying to attract them to you. And I don't want to use unprintable language, but let's leave it as that, right? And again, let's move on to another issue. And I have a video here as well. It has to do with another promise. And this is with respect to the number of ministers. So Bawumia is promising to cut down the number of ministers if he's given the nod. Even though there's been so many opportunities in this administration to cut down the number of ministers, that opportunity was never seized, right? But here again, we have an integral member of that administration promising to cut the number of ministers by more than half should he be given the mantle. Let's listen to him.
This represents a major billion Ghana cedis annually. This represents a major paradigm shift. A major paradigm shift. Additionally, an efficient system of governance will require even fewer ministers. Therefore, I will have no more than 50 ministers. Ladies and gentlemen, I come to our tax system. To increase government tax.
Okay. Our interest here is his promise of cutting ministers to 50. Now, this is a similar promise to JM. As I mentioned earlier on, the NDC unveiled its manifesto today. I was listening to that as well, and I caught that part of Mohammed's promise. So, okay, Alfred is here with us. Let me bring him on, and then we just continue. So this is Alfred Appiah. He's a policy data analyst, so many credentials, an economist. He's based in Canada. He's very active on social media. He's passionate about Ghana, and he writes a lot about issues, especially around policy and data issues in Ghana. We had him here a couple of weeks ago. He was on, was it TV3? Right? You were with TV3 Live when they were discussing the MPP's manifesto. So he comes with fresh knowledge on all the issues related to the MPP's manifesto. So that's what we've been talking about. We've been talking about Bawumia's promises. And so I just played the promise of 50 ministers that he made on the platform. And I'm going to play Mohammed's promise of 60 ministers. And then we'll talk about it. Are they, playing us?
No more than 60. Promoting good governance and combating corruption remarkably reduced the size of government to 60 ministers. No more than 60 ministers. And so there will be other things for other people to do. We all can be ministers. I know when I say 60 ministers, I say, there are people aiming to become ministers, but we all can be ministers. So we would choose 60 ministers, but others would have other assignments that they can do. Address the benefit disparities between Article 71 holders. I've said this already. We have two public servants, Article 71, and then the others who are under the fair wages. And so we want to bridge the disparity between them so that all of us come under an independent emoluments committee, and our salaries and emoluments are determined from the smallest watchman to the president. We will determine our salaries and wages.
All right. So let me go to Alfred first. What was your overall impression about the MPP's manifesto? And then from there we'll come to this specific issue of the number of ministers that they are promising.
Thank you for having me again. Hope you can hear me.
Yes.
So I think, my overall impression was that, and this is for both MPP and NPP, NPP and NDC, both parties are not recognizing the situation that Ghana is in right now. So this is not 2008, where we're going in. We know that a couple of years down the line, we're going to get fresh oil money. This is not 2016, where we knew that there were additional oil fields coming on stream, right? And so there was going to be additional revenue coming. This 2024 elections, because of the decisions that the current government has made, has put Ghana in a very, very difficult situation that everybody that is planning to take power has to keep that in mind. Like, you have suspended debt obligations that are going to become due during this term, right? And so whatever promises that are being made, I know the borrowing stuff doesn't usually appeal to the voters, but you really have to be honest with the voters, and whatever promise that you're making has to be within that context. That notwithstanding, the Vice President or the MPP manifesto seems to focus a lot on empowering the private sector to take over a lot of activities that are currently done by government. So they are talking about, when it comes to in terms of infrastructure, because the idea is that it's going to free some fiscal space and then reduce some of the financing needs of government. One of the things that I point out to initially when I hear something like that is, what is the state of the private sector right now? The private sector, as a result of the domestic debt exchange and all the other things that are happening in the macroeconomic environment, the private sector is not in a good shape in itself. Private sector, we know credit is an important aspect for private sector. When you look at credit over time and you adjust for inflation, you look at credit in real terms, you see that it has been in a negative growth territory. So if you say that your policies are going to leverage the private sector, you have to really look at what state is the private sector in right now. And then the other part is that when the MPP or even when the NDC says the private sector, are they talking private sector that is like friends of the government, right? Because we know that when it comes to government procurement, there's a lot of issues that happen there. So when you're saying that I'm going to leverage the private sector, is it private sector as in doing competitive tendering to make sure that Ghana gets the lowest cost as much as possible for whatever thing that's being pursued? So for example, if you want somebody to build a hostel, you want a private partner to build a hostel, are you going to do a competitive process, or is it just going to be sole source to a crony or something like that? Then there's the value that, or the supposed savings that are going to be made, is not even going to be realized. So I think once you're talking about private sector, of course, these are things that need to be taken into account, right? What private sector are we talking about? Because as we've seen with a lot of the digitalization projects, a lot of them are just sole source to people, under very opaque circumstances. Nobody even know the contracting details of that. And so these are things that we'll have to keep talking about, as this goes on. The other thing that he talked about a lot was this whole idea of reforming the tax system. And I mean, I agree with some of them, because like things like VAT, for example, the way we have it, it's complex, right? Like, there's 12.5 and then there's COVID levy on top of it. So I think if there's a flat rate system for that, I think that makes sense. But things like individual or income tax, I struggle to see how you would want to do a flat system for something like that when, everywhere in the world, progressive incomes, a progressive system is used. I mean, they made reference to Estonia. But the point of the progressive system is to make sure that the people that are at the very top, right, they are paying their fair share of taxes. So if somebody is in the middle paying 20% of their income as income taxes, and then somebody at the very top is also paying 20%, you're not really redistributing wealth equitably that way. And so that's why I think that you could do a flat tax system for something like a goods and services tax, so like the VAT. But I struggle to see how you do something like that with income tax. And then I think the other point that I wanted to speak about also is the whole issue of actually the tax amnesty, right? So they've talked about tax amnesty before they want to start this new tax system. The vice president has said that we're going to get everybody started on a fresh page. This is not the first time we've done tax amnesty. In fact, in 2018, there was a tax amnesty granted. And when you look at tax compliance data over time, it's not really changing that much. Mm-hmm. So the literature also talks about, if you do tax amnesty so often, what happens is that, the bad actors, the so-called bad actors that are evading taxes, they're always expecting that, down the line, you're going to do another tax amnesty. So why would they bother to comply right now? So right now, you go into 2025, you forgive everybody's previous tax liabilities, and then And then they say, okay, well, we can wait. You know, you're forgiving me now. I'll wait. Maybe you did it if a few or 5 or 6 years ago. You're probably going to do it again, right? So tax amnesty, when it is frequent, it's not effective, and the literature talks about that. So right, when you look at the GRA, for example, in 2023, they were saying that the at least the liabilities that they knew about was about 8 billion. They were able to recover about 30-something% of that. That adds on to the revenue base. If you go and do this, bank your whole hope on, say, I'm going to get rid of everybody's going to start afresh, you're losing revenue there. But are you going to be able to compensate for that? Are you going to see increase in compliance so that the revenue that you've lost, you're going to gain it back? As you're also promising to scrap certain taxes, e-levy, you've talked about the betting tax. So already, and think of the fact that the country is already in a hole. The country is not servicing its debt. You have debt obligations that are coming up. You're also promising a lot of things that you're going to spend money on. So all of this hinges on this whole idea that we're going to run a lean government. Now, just reducing the number of ministers is not enough.
So,
right?
but Alfred, let me jump in here and then I'll come to. But first of all, you have articulated that manifesto as if it was presented in the manner in which you have described it. In fact, we were complaining about how disorganized the whole thing was, that they were jumping from one issue area to another. But in your presentation here, you are presented as if it was presented in a very well organized way. Which is, I mean, kudos to you for picking the issues from different, different sections of his speech and putting it together as if it was organized in the way, because we felt that it wasn't properly organized in terms of how the issues were articulated. So kudos to you for doing that for us right now. But it also sounds like some of the issues are being recycled, and maybe largely owing to the fact that they sound appealing, but in practice, they may be impossible to put in place. So because
absolutely, like we've talked about expanding the tax net for so long. We've talked about bringing in more people into the tax bracket. Like, you could probably go back to manifestos from 1992 and you probably will see that they were talking about, because again, at the end of the day, this is just a function of the fact that the economy is largely informal, right? And we've had Ghana card data linked to the tax system. Is that translating to more people coming into the stream? I don't think so.
That should be an area for you of research for you. Take all the manifestos and pull out the promises or the policy issues that have been articulated consistently throughout different manifestos, yet have never really seen the day of light in terms of actual implementation. That might be interesting to really, So what would be the reason for them not being implemented? Is it that these politicians are just saying things that are impossible to implement, or is there a certain implementation barrier with respect to some of these issues? That might be fun, Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. So, but then, I think you are going to jump into the issue of the lean government. So let's do that quickly and then we can move on.
Yeah. So just appointing less ministers, right? Remember that the public service, there are people already working in these ministries. So it's a proposal that once you consolidate, say, for example, you put Ministry of Communication and Ministry of Information together, are you going to reduce the number of staff, right? And then are you going to reduce their goods and services budgets? Because that's where a lot of the spending is also, apart from compensation. So you have to look at that. So just cutting it at the top and reducing the number of ministers is not, I don't think by itself is going to generate the savings that they're talking about. So if you bring them together, they probably there could be duplication of roles. But if these ministries have existed independently, right? If these ministries have existed independently and they've operated like that, you have to think about the line of work. So are you going to lay people off? Is that what you're going to do? Are you going to reassign people? So we have to really dig deeper into this whole idea of appointing less ministers. I think it's a great idea, but I don't think it generates the savings as we're talking about, because you're not going to pay them their ministry salary, their minister salary, but that's just a small proportion of the budget of the entire ministry, right? All the staff that are there, all the programs and policies that they have in place and what they are funding and all of that. Once you consolidate, are you going to just get rid of some of them? Then there's a question of, are you going to create more unemployment that way? So I don't think it's because they just throw it around that, we run a lean government, we're going to just reduce the number of ministers. I don't think that by itself is enough, right? We have to go deeper into at the ministry level and see, if you put communication and information, I mean, that's the one that everybody knows it has to go together. If you start putting sanitation and water and all those stuff together, like, are you going to now start cutting on the number of employees that are in there, which then has unemployment implications, right? So we have to really probe. I don't think the explanations and the supposed savings from that, I don't think it's going to offset all the other promises that they are making, because that's what they are all banking on. That once we cut down, then we're going to cut down on waste, and we have enough money to then invest in all these other things. So we have to continue probing.
Okay. So all right. So Zita, these two political parties are trying to knock each other out of the way to get in the front of an issue that is perceived to be popular among Ghanaians, because there's always a constant refrain about we having a lot of ministers, and people attribute some, as Alfred said, we attribute some of the waste in the system to the fact that we have redundancy in ministerial appointments. But listen to Mahama, who had earlier on promised 60 ministers, and then Baumia jumps on the bandwagon and also promises he decides to cut it by 10. I don't know if it's an attempt to just maybe show that he is promising something that is better than JM's, or is there any sincerity in this promise?
No, yeah, we did talk about that a few weeks ago when we evaluated, and I think I researched in at the time the MPP had over 110 ministers at the time, ministers and deputy ministers.
As we speak, right?
Yes. As a few weeks ago when I did the research. So it's interesting that Baumia is now promising us 50. For me, like I've said, and I'll keep it short so Fifi can come in. I think this whole manifesto is an attempt to disrespect the intelligence of the electorate and Ghanaians. And unfortunately, most Ghanaians will not read it and catch on these things that it's like, oh, we just have to do a manifesto. Let's just do it. Let's just put something out. But careful thought have not got into the details of this manifesto and how you're going to deliver a better Ghana. And that for me is a problem. You are cutting it by 10, but you are currently part of a government that has 110 ministers and deputy ministers. So what is the rationale for the 50? And like I said, Baumia just kept saying this and moved to the next. Like, and I do respect all my colleagues, but I am struggling to go like, wow, this is somebody who has a PhD, and you are, because if there's any rule in academia, you don't just make a point and you move on to the next. You provide some context. So, with the 50, this is how we are going to do it. Certain ministries will not have deputies, and so we'll have just ministers. Give us some context on how this will work. But it's like, I want to compete. If Mahama said 60, I'm gonna say 50. No context, and then he will move to the issue of tax. Like I said, I wrote the note, and I'm glad Alfred touched on, and he used his economic brain to touch on the flat rate issue, because I was wondering how you going to have a flat rate if somebody's on the lower end and another person is on the higher end. Then it's not equitable and fair, because here we know that you are taxed based on your income. And I'm like, these days I want to be in the low income, because sometimes you see how much these governments are looting out of your money. I'm like, what is going on? A few years ago, I had to file my tax, and I ended up crying because the taxes represented somebody's annual salary. So you are taxed based on how much you make, and that is something that is important. I feel like Baumia has copied and pasted a lot of foreign systems without looking at what is happening in Ghana. And I hope we can have a second take on this issue, because like I said, I have extensive notes and I haven't gone through any of my queries. Yes. I've not had the opportunity to even talk about my key problems. And so I hope we have the opportunity to really do a part 2 for some of us to really look at some of the things that he said. And I'm going to land my ship to say that when Baumia mentioned the element of having seniors home and retirement homes, that is when I knew this dude is not serious. It doesn't work with our culture. If you're going to create a task force, like a health task force, to go maybe 3 months into their communities, you pay them to educate people who are taking care of the elderly in their homes on dementia and how to manage. It makes more sense. But for you to say that, you are going to create senior homes and retirement homes, and I'm like, you must be kidding me. The average Ghanaian is struggling. Who is going to put their parents somewhere or their grandmother somewhere in the name of paying exorbitant fees for nurses to take care of them. That is when, I know that this dude has lost it. But I hope there will be an opportunity to talk about the MPP manifesto, because my 2 notes, it can't go to waste. That's all I want to say. It cannot go.
All right. Well, I think yes, we have to do that. Basically, break the manifestos into pieces and pick them apart. Yeah, you've already done this. We'll do same for the NDCs. But before I come to Fifi, I'll quickly say, look, you made a very interesting point, which I equally observed, that there are a lot of the promises in the manifesto articulated by Baumia that sound like he just picked, topical issues or talking points from Western media platforms and political cycles, and then dump them in there. We have a certain culture, and for me, I feel like in our effort to develop similar to the advanced world, there are certain cultural practices that we can incorporate into our own development. We don't have to take wholesale. It can be a customized approach. You look at a place like Japan. Japan is an advanced country, but their advancement didn't really just take word for word verbatim from the West. Their values are still incorporated in their development, and so we have to be very mindful of these things. You understand? We have a tradition of taking care of the elderly, and so why would you be proposing a system that is entirely alien to us? Why not, promote that communal system that has always existed among us? It's something to value. It's something that this part of the world are maybe regretting for having replaced, if they ever had it before. So why would you be advocating a policy that is going to create that alienation of family members, especially the people who need us the most? Fifi, I'll let you come in here with respect to the lean government subject matter. JM promised first. Baumia tried to get ahead of him by cutting his by 10.
That is absolutely correct, Doc. It's very interesting. It seems that instead of going to tell Ghanaians the policies that will actually change the fundamentals of the country, is tend to like a business pitch, or like haggling in our street market, where these one undercast that, these one undercast that, and it's actually pathetic. You sit back and you watch it, and you ask yourself, well, where are the brains? Because JM spoke about this. But look, in one breath, Baumia is saying, I'll cut my government to 50, trying to undercut JM's promise of 60. But in another breath, same Baumia is promising to bring the chiefs into local government to pay them. So where is the savings? Ask yourself, because you cut in here, and then you're going to incentivize, or you are promising the chiefs, unless that is one of those promises that you're not going to fulfill. That's why. So we have to be very, very, very careful what these leaders are doing, especially the NPP. And what I've seen with the NPP is, in the past, they've gotten away with such. In the past, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 25, 30 years back, they've gotten away with a lot of these. Even go back to 2016. They got away with all these free SHS, not proper feasibility studies, not knowing the costings. But this time around, Ghanaians are asking the questions. And especially many of us who are based in diaspora. I've just come from Ghana. As I said, I was on Pan-African TV. I've been on Radio Go, and we are analyzing some of these issues, and we are asking some of these questions. And Ghanaians are beginning to understand and embrace the critical questions that we are asking, and they are doing the same. So that is why Baumia and many of these parties are not getting away with some of these things this time around. So to me, it doesn't work. You touch on the flat rate. Flat rate is not for Ghana, as Alfred says, and Zita said the same thing. You look at this Western system. Those who earn more pays more, because that is how they created what is called a trickle-down economy. Because when you earn so much, you then be able to pay so much services and then pay more taxes, and that money then trickle down to the average person. So you take care of society, and then those who learn less, government then steps in to also help them out. And that is how the system has always worked. You cannot just get up overnight and say, oh, I'm doing a flat rate. Well, a primary economy, a third world economy, emerging economy, there will be definitely a massive gap in your earnings. And ask yourself, where are you going to get that funds to plug it in for? When you look at the West, I won't even be surprised if it's a Western government doing this. Why? Because I could say, oh, maybe they have a lot of reserves and they could use some of their reserves to compensate what they are giving out. But this is a third world country. We are already in situation where we have pushed our debt burden into the future. How could somebody just get up overnight? And the MPP promises, to me, it sounds more like somebody having a morning shower and then idea drops into their head and they for oh, UK has been doing this, the American has been doing this, Canada has been doing this. Therefore, let me go and tell the people we can also do this. But it doesn't work. So what we need to do is we need to actually go back to the basics. We need to look at how these world major economies started. The United Kingdom, the Canadian economy, the American economy, the other economies across Europe or across the Western world. They did not suddenly, last time I did mention that they started from what? On certain step, taking the right step and then um, 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 perfecting it and getting to the point that they can actually run. And when they run and they fall, they have something they can get up and dust themselves off because they have something to hold on to. We have nothing to hold on to. So we need to go back to that basics. They started with industrialization. Look, if you go into the history of how Britain started, they were worse than the situation Ghana is in as we speak. They were worse than us, but they took their time. They did not rush it. They took one step at a time. They tinkered and tempered with what they think needs doing. And then by so doing, they got it spot on by building on or leveraging on what they had and then building on brick by brick, somebody will say. And that is exactly Ghana has to do as a country. If we suddenly try to mimic the West, thinking we can bring the Western style and the system straight into Ghana, we are building on a very shaky foundation, a foundation that is not secure, a foundation that we do not have enough reserve. A foundation that is based on what Akufo-Addo termed it as the Godisberg economy, going to borrow to come and build infrastructures. A foundation that we actually go out there all the time to borrow to come and plug holes. No, it will not work for us. So these are some of the things that personally I will highlight. And when it comes to the amnesty as well, as Alfred mentioned, tax amnesty is a good thing, but it's not encouraging. Why is it not encouraging? We did amnesty years back. Do we even have the report of that amnesty? Do we even know the savings that the country made from that? We don't. That report wasn't made public. Another one. And to me, some of these things are pretty worrying for me. Cutting your ministers to 50 does not really solve the problem. We all know what ministerial roles are. The minister's work is to be within that particular sector, work with the public servants, direct the experienced public servants who actually do the work. It's the public servants who actually do the work. So the minister's duty is just directing the experienced public servant on the path of government, where government wants to arrive and what government wants to achieve. That is all it is. That is all it is. So if there is any cutting, they have to look across the ministry and ask themselves, maybe we have so much public servants that we are not in need of. But then, as Alfred did mention again, that will also create another unemployment issues. So we have to be very, very careful. I think the NPP has totally got it wrong. They do not have a policy. There is nothing that has been said that is policy. Everything that we are discussing, these are tiny, tiny chopping and changes. Kind of somebody will call looking after the little monies, but it doesn't really change the fundamentals of Ghana, as I said earlier, because these are not policies, bold policies that would take us from the ditch that we are in. Thank you.
Yeah. So it sounds like they just sprinkled glitter in sand, right? So you can see the spots, but it's not really a decoration. But so Zita, I mean, I think today's conversation has been more at a very high resolution, just analyzing these more broadly. But we are not going to waste your notes right there. I think, yeah. So okay, so let me give you an opportunity here to tell us what it is that, like, what's the issue that jumped out to you in terms of collecting all these notes during the process of listening to Baumia. What is your issue? What are your main issues? Quickly, and then I'll go to Alfred.
It can be quickly. I
Okay,
can't
so
write. Are you serious?
Give me a hint here.
Know that I could be on a dating app trying to find me a husband, and I'll put 2 hours writing notes.
Okay,
you're not being fair to me, so I will leave it. I'll just touch on.
Okay, so what we will do is next week we're going to talk about the NDC's manifesto.
Comparative. Okay.
So what we did today is basically look at the manifesto idea in general, and so we went into a lot of generalities here. But now, since we've gotten that out of the way, next week will be, to the bare bones of both manifestos, right? So your notes will come in handy there, and hopefully we can get Alfred to join us then as well, and then we can go to the specific policy issues, even though Fifi insists that these are not really policy issues, but we would, consider them as such for discussion purposes. But Alfred, I wanted to come. I mean, Ezita, if you have, of course.
Sure. Yes. Yes. And that was just a joke, by the way. But yeah, definitely, I would have a few things that I feel I would want to discuss more is using digitalization to tackle corruption. Like Baumia said, using digitalization to address corruption, because corruption is done in the dark. And if we want to address it, then we must be transparent. And digitalization would do that. And he cited being able to use some they were able to get ghost names from SNIT and certain government organizations. I'm like, dude, you must be kidding me. How is digitalization pure for corruption, knowing that Ghana's system is not, as digitized as he is thinking and how it will work? Another thing I would like to elaborate on, the concept of the possibility mindset. I'm not like, and Baumia said he's an academia. He gave his own trajectory, said, oh, somebody who has moved from academia to the Bank of Ghana. So I am surprised with this possibility mindset, growth mindset that he's going to imbibe into our curricula. Which part of the curricula is this going to be imbibing? Is it going to be at the basic level, the high school level?
But with the idea of possibility, is that even optimistic enough? Is that an optimistic concept? Saying that it is possible, is that optimistic?
It's not. It's and I'm saying he's riding on, like you're saying, just fancy words, because when you say you're going to create a mindset, the mindset thrives based on system. You can't tell me to be a problem solver, a risk taker, an opportunity spotter, and a design thinker. These are the 4 things he mentioned. And somebody who's keen on education, I want to elaborate on that. When the systems are not there, we grew up in a country where even as young people, our parents are don't go close to the sea. The sea takes people. Most Ghanaians don't know how to swim. And basic life skills like that. So even our culture in itself inculcates fear. So how do you create a curriculum that dismantles the system of fear of and we know the Ghanaian culture and the Ghanaian positionality and personality is being reserved. Nigerians have that inbuilt aggressiveness and inbuilt risk taking. And so we know that in a way, I would say it is within our genetic fabric as Ghanaians to be more reserved, play it safe and all that. So I am just curious. I hope and pray I can get a one-on-one with Baumia one of these days, because I was like, this doesn't make sense. How do we create a possibility mindset? How do we create this mindset in the curricula? And at what level would this be introduced? And what are the supporting institutions that will make this possibility mindset a reality? Because it must be augmented in the home, because we have a culture that tends to make people play it safe. So these are just a few things, and a lot more, as you can see I have here. But and issues on procurement and procurement act and all that, using all those strategies to make the system better. So I look forward to another lively discussion where I can delve into my notes, because after 2 hours of listening to Baumia, I don't, if you don't host me, I would do a TikTok live, and I have the numbers, 100,000 followers. I'm going to go off on my TikTok page talking about that. So I'll let Alfred and Fifi have their take on some of their key takeaways from this whole manifesto. And hopefully we can all join next week to do a comparative and delve into the details really well.
Yeah. Next week we'll get into the bare bones, so keep your notes. But Alfred, because in your description of the whole process, I think I get the impression that you feel that there could have been a better way of putting a manifesto together, especially in terms of the specific things that they are promising that they're going to do, right? But now you talked about the debt exchange and the fact that we have defaulted on our external debt, and people who sort of thought government bonds and securities were a safe place to invest also lost their monies. And so they have bypassed all that, and they are making promises which in so many ways have to deal with expenditure. Do you think that if a candidate was to accept that reality and come up with a manifesto that addresses the things that you feel should be foremost, will they have a political edge?
Probably not. But I think this is probably where industry also has to play a role, right? Like, because all these guys consulted industry, I do think, in drafting their manifesto. So I'm surprised that even, for example, the Ghana Association of Banks is not releasing a statement about preaching fiscal responsibility, like even all these other ones, like Guta and all those ones, right? Because in as much as those Guta, for example, they're all hailing the proposal of tax amnesty, because of course they're not going to pay the liability that they had. So of course that industry association is going to be happy with that. But people just have to be honest that as you're increasing, you say you're going to cut some expenditure. Government cutting expenditure in Ghana is not credible. Like the austerity measures that we see elsewhere, like when Ghana says it's doing austerity, you still see people going to conferences. Like look at the climate change conference that happened. I think it in
Morocco.
The one that
was it in Morocco or the Qatar one? There was one in Qatar. And
yeah, the Qatar. That's the one I'm talking about. Okay. Look at how many people Ghana sent there. This was the time that the country was saying we are in austerity. We are trying to manage government spending. Look at all that. So when it comes to cutting government spending, government of Ghana is not credible for that. And so that is not going to be your way out. And so now if you can't credibly cut spending, and you're also going to expand spending again, because you're promising all these things, then of course, at the end of the day, your fiscal bottom line is going to be even worse. And mind you, you have been shut out of the international capital market. You've defaulted. And so because of that, it's not an option for you. Right now, the domestic bond market is not even an option. The only option that government is using right now to finance budgets is treasury bills. And when you look at treasury bill issuances over the last 5 times or 6 instances, Ghana government is missing the targets. And even those treasury bills, we are issuing them. Significant part of it is just using to refinance the old debts. And then you get little net new money that you can use for government programming. So when you look at all
they're
of
running
it,
a pyramid scheme.
Basically, it's a scheme. That's I think it might have been an NPP, the former
the Ponzi
chair of
scheme
the
characterization.
finance committee that said that it was basically a Ponzi scheme, because that's what it is, right? You're basically just borrowing to refinance old debt. And so where is the money going to come from? And I know that you have to make these appealing promises to people, but you also have to really, and I think this is where industry, this is where academia has to really step in and challenge some of these things. I don't think the policy advocacy space in Ghana is at the level that, of course, we would expect elsewhere, right? Because at the end of the day, it just becomes like a little back and forth, but it's not really getting to the substance and actually being honest with these politicians that this what you're planning to do is not possible. One of the things that I personally have been advocating for is both parties need to show us a mini budget, right? To show that these are the revenue lines that we are going to get after all these promises that we are making. This is our expenditure. This is how expenditure is going to look like, because they all know what the current government budget is, so they can use that to estimate. Because if you are promising something, you have to have an idea of how much it's going to cost you, right? So if they can elaborate that and show that, okay, these are the revenues that we're expecting, these are the spending that we're going to do, this is how the fiscal deficit is going to look like, then people can see and know that, oh, this what they're doing is credible or not. Like, because in a lot of countries they do that, right? Like the politicians will do a small budget. It doesn't have to be a full budget, but a small one-page budget that shows everything so that everybody can see. So that's okay. At the end of the day, the fiscal deficit is going to. So if your fiscal deficit is going to be high, then it's like, okay, well, how are you going to finance that? Because you'll be locked out of your main source of borrowing. So where is the money going to come from? And so all these cuts that you are talking about, how much is it supposed to generate? Like if they say that you're going to cut. So for example, one of the things that Baumia said was that he's going to cut government spending by 3% of GDP, and that's going to go to the private sector. The question I ask is that if the private sector is going to even build infrastructure, you said you're still going to lease them, right? So it's not like you're saving 3 billion as you're talking about, right? Like the net savings is going to be lower. And also, if you bring in the fact that the whole idea of private sector outsourcing things to the private sector carries a significant corruption risk, and carries the fact that cronies can take over that. And so if you do that, we've seen a lot of projects and things where the cost is just inflated. So even though you're saying that you're going to by going to the private sector, you're going to save cost, if you don't do it the right way, if you do it in a competitive way, if you still do the old way of procurement, you probably even might be spending more than compared to if government was doing it. So there's the level of credibility in all these promises. I think it's lacking, and we need to continue to interrogate them and get them to really give us the details. Because I know that they just stand there and read these things, and even when you read the manifesto, the full document, it's just full of repetitions, right?
Yeah.
It's just full of repetitions. Like you don't really get to the substance. Like, okay, what is this going to do? Like, how are you going to do this? How are you going to
What's the
finance
reasoning behind it? Yeah.
You don't get it. One thing that I picked on also was the whole idea of one of this. I didn't think he had very good strategies for managing the cost of living, right? Like he did talk about things like, oh, we're going to modernize agriculture, and we've been talking about modernizing agriculture since I was in kindergarten. We've been talking about that. Like how much value addition have we added to our thing? We did one district, one factory. How much value do we actually add to raw materials? Yeah. And then one of the things that he talks about is solar. He's going to rely on solar. He's going to add 2,000 megawatts of solar to the grid. And then I asked the question, if solar was that cheap, right? Because solar, the main issue with solar is that the initial investment cost is high.
Yes.
Right now, the Volta River Authority, BUI is building, they're trying to build a 250 megawatts plant. It's about $480 million for that. They started in 2019. Up to now, it's just about 50 megawatts that they have added. So if Baumia comes to tell me that he's going to be able to add 2,000 megawatts of solar power to the grid, I doubt that. Because
he superficially mentioned net metering, and net metering is I mean he just threw it out there casually, because net metering is when you acquire solar and put in your on your roof, and then it's fed into the grid, right? And then you are balanced from. So he just spoke about it, and again, it goes back to this idea of taking policy issues that exist somewhere and dumping them in your thing. And that, I mean, I was like, you just said net metering just on the fly, and I was wondering, I was like, do you know?
Because how many people can actually, how many households in Ghana can actually afford to buy solar panels to produce so that then the rest is fed into the grid. How many people? Because in order to do that, you have to have incentives. Like here, for example, the government decided that they're going to give loans to people who want to do use solar. And so back in Ghana, like how many people can afford? Like if you look at the quotes that you get for trying to install solar, you run away. A lot of people will just run away. So where is that going to come from? And so there's a lot of things like the government's own energy transition plan right now tells us that they're only going to add about 10% of renewable, not just solar, all renewables by 2030. Here is Baumia saying that at the end of 4 years, he's going to add 2,000 megawatts.
And he doesn't say how. He doesn't say how, right? He
Exactly.
just puts it out there and then
and so we like I think we're at a point where we really have to challenge. I think it's picking up compared to earlier years where they would just throw out things and then people run with it. I think these days people are continuing to challenge some of these things because we really have to assess the feasibility under the current circumstances.
Okay, so we will talk offline and then we'll figure out if you are able to join us next week. But Zita has her notes from this one. She's going to compile another set of notes from the NDC one, and then when we meet on Saturday next week, we would go into the bare bones, and then you have a field day with Baumia if you wish. Anyway, I would like to give Fifi the last word, and then we'll wrap up and we'll just call it a day and then meet next week.
Thank you, Doc. I appreciate that. Zita spoke about problem solving, as Baumia did mention, and I just for in the West they see curiosity as a very wise thing to do. They call curiosity intelligence, and unlike back home in Ghana and Africa, there is the common saying, especially in Ghana, curiosity kills the cat. So that tells you the different cultures. Over here, when a child is curious about things, they tell you that is intelligence, but not where we came from. So the fabric of our society, there have to be a mindset change. The paradigm shift. Something has to happen to the mindset of many Ghanaians, the society that we've come from, some of our wise sayings and what have you. It doesn't really help us as a society. So I understand that there should be change in some of these things. Academically, yes. Over the years, we've said it that, look, we need to change something within our academics, especially from the primary. We need to try and catch them very early and then begin to introduce some of these problems that we have and then introduce them in our academics. But this hasn't done. I was sad to see in Ghana that every Friday is dedicated as what is that called? Like it's like a comic relief day on Friday in primary schools, that the children go there and they drum and they dance, then dance and dance. So every single child in Ghana knows. Yes, they really know how to dance and move their body and all that. That does not build a society. We need to look at where we come from. The politicians, they are happy for you to see you dance and enjoying yourself. As you are dancing, they are doing away with the money. They are educating their children and their grandchildren in the West. And same children will come back and rule you again. So why are you dancing? Why have you ever asked yourself, why have this been introduced in the curriculum that you are happily doing it? And that is a question to many Ghanaian parents. Why did they do that? Entertainment day on Fridays, that they just go and play all these Afrobeats and dance all day.
They actually do that in schools?
I have a school next to, absolutely, in primary school. And I even have an independent school next to my residence. They do the same thing. And I ask myself, so are they going to dance their life out every Friday whilst the parents come and just pick them and take them home? If my children are in this school, seriously, I will be crying for their future. But look, this is the Ghana that we have, the society that we have. So we need to sometimes change the mindset of this society. So with that, I think I'm on board. Baumia spoke about using digitalization to fight corruption. Baumia himself is epitome of corruption. And that is one thing. Digitalization was not able to resolve his own corrupt attitude by, as soon as they came into power, making Alhaji Ahmed Ramadan Baumia, Samira's father and in-law of Baumia, the ambassador to the UAE, Abu Ramadan Samira's brother, Nabdo deputy Mumuni Abdullah Baumia, Baumia's elder brother, technical advisor to the Ministry of Interior, overseeing security services, Honorable Lariba Zawira Abdu Baumia, Baumia's own sister, who was the CEO of the Northern Development Authority, and the hair was when all these Aboboyes or tricycle, 400 tricycles disappears, and he took over 2 million Ghana cedis cost of these tricycles disappear under her. Palugu Dam, as we mentioned, we lost a whopping amount of money on that. Editor's General report confirmed on the consolidated fund the amount that was giving 12 million USD paid to MPP contractor Power China International that disappeared with the money. Fauza Ramadan, a brother of Samira Baumia, special assistant to Baumia, sole sourcing contracts to Baumia's own Abraham Baumia, a brother of Dr. Baumia himself, who owns the resource assets. So if I carried on, we will not stop today. This gentleman was giving the Sunyani Airport contract, he was giving Cocoa Rose, and the Editor General report in 2023, paragraph 55 and 56, section 41 to 58, labels this kind of sourcing that went to this gentleman. So Baumia himself is a epitome of corruption. And he today, I'm surprised to see him mount a platform to say, I'm using digitalization to fight corruption. Because this is a man who have enriched himself through this kind of corruption. So it's one of those stories. They say one thing and they do another. Yes, that is the typical sad story of Ghana and many African countries when it comes to politics. But there is one thing the NPP has to know, that this time the Ghanaians are ready. They are ready for a change. I was involved in so many groundwork whilst I was in Ghana, areas that you will never see people wearing NDC t-shirt are actually screaming for change. And change is coming. The wind of change is blowing. Thank you.
Okay. I would like to basically declare to our viewers that Fifi is the Deputy Communications Officer of NDC Ireland UK branch. So he has spoken like a true politician. But I mean, it's all true, right? Basically, there's no lie in anything that he said. But guys, I'd like to thank you for thanks a lot for joining me today. Hopefully we get to meet again next week and discuss this manifesto business further. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you. Thank you.
Say